How about getting a PhD in branding? Today, I swear I sat down with the Jeff Bezos of branding and the episode is mind blowing. I had 3 pages of notes and I am so stoked to share this episode with you. We talk about the difference between fame and legacy, how the definition of brand can be broken down into just 4 words, how the truest things are simple and false things are complicated. For branding to work, you have to be aware of the environment it will exist in to rise above the noise. The best question to ask about brand, what is not there or what's missing from your market, how B2B and B2C are antiquated terms that sacrifice your brand, all the ways tangibly and tactically in your business, whether you're a physical product, a digital product, to stand above the noise and to differentiate yourself with brand, and how a lack of brand and differentiation limits yourself to features or price competing that gets in the way of you actually accomplishing the mission. And today's guest, by the way, he's incredible. He's been in this business for 35 plus years. He is the slayer of mundane and the blowtorch of mediocrity, his words, which I loved. We talked about how passion will not replace differentiation, the difference between a rich brand and a poor brand, and how poor brands force people into survival and rich brands push people into contribution, how you should stop putting your business in the sea of sameness, how nobody cares about what you do. They care about the transformation you make possible. And he breaks down the 3 distinctions of the types of business that exist. There's the practitioner business, the professional business, and the junior business. And the practitioner business is price driven. The professional business is product driven, but the ones that understand brand, the genius bucket, is value driven. You don't need your brand needs you. And a brand is as powerful as it recognizes its ability to be fluid, and how the greatest brands are built on values, not transient items or products. We laughed, we shared some common laughs on this one, how something stupid said more often does not make it better. And he takes us through some tangible exercises to identify your brand and stand out. And my favorite part is how he defined sales, marketing, and branding. And the way that he does this is brands is identifying that what we do, our outcomes are seeds. And our job is to differentiate how they're different than all the seeds out there. Marketing's job is to spread the seeds, and sales is a harvesting of the seeds planted. And that's just a summary of my notes, and I have pages and pages. And so I'm incredibly excited for you to get in today's episode. David is an absolute genius when it comes to branding, and this one is loaded with tangible takeaways and nuggets. So without further ado, let's get into the show. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show. I'm honored, I'm humbled, and quite frankly, we're probably going to get into a few fights because this guy's from New York, I'm from Boston, but we'll leave that where it goes since we're both Midwestern people now. But I am so incredibly excited to be joined by what feels like the Jeff Bezos of branding, but in actuality, you know you're good when people use your name as a verb to hit your branding. So we have the slayer of the mundane today, who's been before the show just blowing my mind because he also speaks my language. His books are incredible because they're picture books for people like me that give you the meat, the takeaways, and help you kind of get in. But he's been an Amazon bestselling author, Google's #1 ranked rebranding expert. He's been in this business for decades and more, pretty close to how long I've been alive, which not to call him out on anything, but he's got the experience under his belt. And he's an absolute G when it comes to branding. And I love everything he shared with me. He was even dropping quotes from his new book, like a mind is like a parachute. It doesn't work if it's not open. And he is the master of branding. So different is better than better. And if you don't give the market the story to talk about, they'll define your brand story for you. And so I'm incredibly humbled. I'm excited and honored to be joined by my new friend, David. So David, welcome to the show.
Thanks, George. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. If you ever need a hype man, just call me.
Well, I know that you have 2 particular skill sets. One is the ability to get the group in like one big group hug and then say something that will absolutely make them just now wipe themselves off and go, ew, where's the nearest shower?
Yeah. So I feel so seen already. What a great way to start the show. I'm like 100%. And just for everybody listening, David and I connected on Instagram and I was stoked because I dove into content. Like I was in YouTube videos from 9 years ago and I'm like, oh man, I got notes to be taken. I got takeaways to be had. And he has an incredible book that he wrote. What was it called? Brand Intervention was the first one.
Yep, this guy, Brand Intervention.
Brand Intervention, 33 steps to transform the brand you have into the brand that you need. And little status update. As you're hearing this, you're probably a couple of days away from his brand new book being released, which I am stoked about to put on my coffee table. I told him as soon as the show is done, I'm going to order it because I've got a sneak peek, which you can see in front of you, which is Rich Brand, Poor Brand: How to Unleash Your David in a World of Goliaths, which, number one, the title is incredible.
There's your photo.
That's the
Yeah,
thumbnail for the
Rich Brand,
show.
Rich Brand. One thing I'll say, just for those that are just listening to this and not seeing it, is that Damon John wrote the foreword to the first book. Damon, like me, he born in Brooklyn, raised in Queens, but Damon's 10 years younger than me. He's a kid, right? And but he comes from the school of hard knocks, so the street smarts. Where you learn to try that. Well, that didn't work. Okay, try this. Oh, okay, that worked. It's like, and you kind of learn as you go. And for this next one, Claude Silver, and she is amazing. She's the chief heart officer of VaynerX, Gary Vaynerchuk's company, agency, and has one of the biggest hearts of anybody that I've ever met, period. And she and I, we kind of connected a little bit on social media. And then she goes, let's jump on a Zoom call. She's wonderful. She's so transparent. And we got that, and she goes, oh my God, this is great. You have to let me know when you're in New York. And I had a gig. I was speaking at the Grand Hyatt for a gig. And I said, I'm going to be there then. And she goes, oh, good. She goes, let's schedule something for Tuesday morning. So Tuesday morning came around, and we were there. And I walked into her office, and within 10 minutes, and I'm literally not exaggerating, and I've never had this happen in my entire career, within 10 minutes, she could see, and I could see, there was such a beautiful synergy that she goes, oh my God, this period of time is not enough, not going to be enough David time. She goes, can you come back tomorrow morning too? And we're going to have our meeting, we're going to finish, but can you come back tomorrow morning too? And came back the next morning. And it was then, and I think I included this in the book. She goes, so how'd the speaking gig go last night? And I said, well, it was very, very interesting. It was interesting, but it was kind of fucked up because no one told me that the audience mix. So there was there was a little bit of, like, I was sort of attacked a little bit because I had shared a particular bit of stories on one particular thing, and it was obvious. It seemed to alienate a certain percentage of the room. I was like, okay, this is interesting. And it was very obvious when I walked in there. I'm like, look at the mix here. Anyway, it was an interesting moment. But I turned to her and I said, I realized one thing last night. I'm at a point in my life, in my career, that it's about legacy. When I was beginning my career, it was about fame. And the difference between fame and legacy is that fame is about me and legacy is about you. And she goes, oh my God, can I write that down? I'm like, yes, you can write that down. But that's the kind of relationship we have. And she's a great person. And I'm honored to have her in the book.
Oh man, I love that. And also kudos. One of the best pieces of advice that I ever got speaking, because like, I don't know about you, but I'm more of a just kind of figure it out as I go, never taken speaking training. And I think it was Simon Sinek's team. And he's like, the goal is to always offend about 10% of the room. And he's like, George, you probably hit 50, but it works for you. So keep it. And I've just kind of stayed that way the whole time. And so I love that. And speaking about what you said, the difference between fame and legacy, I kind of think it's an important transition in because, one of the things for me personally, I've been an entrepreneur for, almost 2 decades. I still feel like I don't understand what brand is at the level that you do. And so just for everybody listening, can you define brand, like what brand means, how to use it, like just how to even think about brand? Because I feel like it's related to what you just shared.
1,000%. So I'll set this up so it has the right impact for everyone hearing and watching this. So one is first of all, when I wrote Brand Invention, I was curious. I went into Amazon and I typed in, books, branding. At the time that I started the book, there were 6,500 books on branding. 60, not 1,000, not 1,500, not 500, 6,500. If you go today, there's over 25,000 books on the topic of branding. one thing that I've learned in my career is that any place where there's a hell of a lot of opinions, all divergent opinions, all kinds of shit, there's something's missing. There's a fundamental that is missing. If there could be that many freaking spins, plays, angles, things, it's like, and it's not even that they were necessarily disagreeing, but it's like, well, no, this is really what, so and all that. I say, wait a second, that's bullshit. I know for a fact that the truest things are simple. The true experts are able to simplify. The false experts complicate. And so I bring that down into, you know what? I'm going to introduce in the book a 4-word definition that I have found. This is what I found to totally work and turn millionaires into billionaires, turn startups into millionaires and empires, etc. 4 words: the art of differentiation. That's ultimately what it comes down to, because design is there to serve the brand. Motion is there to serve the brand. Texture, color, story, narrative, shape, form, all of that is there to serve the brand. To what end? Because we live in a freaking noisy ass world. That's why it's like, you have to look at where is the thing that we're creating going to live? If I am an artist creating something, I need to be aware of what space will it be viewed in. If I am a musician, I need to go, hey, if I'm right next to a freaking construction site that's noisy as shit, well, either I need to pick a new site or I need to figure out a new way. Maybe they all listen with just headphones. I need to, if I lacking that observational skill and paying attention to those details will tarnish it. Or if I have a great place of that, I'm going to have open a restaurant, but yet, it's right next to some place that really has disgusting fumes. Smell is such an important part of cooking. So how the hell, so it's just looking at that. That's the same thing with branding. It's like, what is the environment, the place that it's going to need to rise above the noise? That's what I operate on. And it's why I love when I look back at when Apple said, hey, we're going to create retail stores. Everyone's like, yeah. And all the naysayers poo-pooed it. And they came out and did everything that violated everything that every retail expert ever said, this is the way you must do it. And it sells more product per square foot of any retail store in the world.
Yeah, I love that. I love just even the art of differentiation, because you unpacked like the texture, the color, the motion, which are all these ingredients that make up the noise or that make up the components of brand. And I also love your point, because I'm going to ask you a question about this, because I love this view of like having the observational awareness of understanding where your quote unquote brand is going to live. So you have an awareness of how to differentiate in between that. So like now that we're in this like almost hyper connected, noisy world, to your point, which I 100% agree with, there's platforms abound, right? There's social media platforms, there's YouTube, there's websites, and there's still traditional media and brand. How do you approach that now, understanding the elements of like the noise in each one of those buckets?
What I do, it's something I talked about. I did a weekend workshop this past weekend, and one of the things I talked about was, I said, if I ever have the opportunity to work with you, one thing you will find is that I look for what's not there. I look, what is the conversation not happening that should be happening? What's the level of enthusiasm that's maybe missing that could be happening? What are the things, because the hardest thing for people to see is what's not there. People are so like, oh, blah, 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 and the obvious stuff. And that's why I laugh, and anybody who's a real pro laughs at the stupidity of focus groups, because you get one person saying blah, 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 and I don't like blah, 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 and then all of a sudden the other person, all of it now it's like a freaking little contagion of just bullshit that goes from telepathically from one person to another. And and it's like, first of all, people don't shop in herds. They don't shop. It's like people either shop, if they're men, they can shop one or two. If they're women, they could shop 2, 3, 4, 5. And you need to understand that. That's just kind of like the way it rolls. And I laughingly, whenever I work on like, for example, a brand that specifically, I find that the women are a key audience, that women can get excited about the things that men consider frivolous. I think men are genetically incapable of getting excited about that little foil shape right in the corner of the shoebox that the women go, oh, they get me. I love that. Oh, and it's always the champagne rose gold. Oh, I love that silver. I love the gold. I love the reflection. And it's like, and guys are like, they're looking at each other like, what the hell's going on here? They don't get it. But it's understanding your audience, and guys will get excited about the things that women won't give a shit about. And then there are things where both family members, but where's this thing going to live? Not only the backdrop of the noise, but the backdrop of the recipient who is there that's going to go, wow, this was amazing.
Yeah, I love that. I think, I want to unpack that a little bit more too, because I see this thing, and I'll own this. I've definitely consulted and advised people where they're so deep in brand that they're in diminishing returns because they're obsessing about things that normal people aren't going to experience, and it's preventing them from experiencing and iterating it. But there's this like line or this harmony between brand and then thinking about your components, right? So what are the core components for you that kind of make up brand, right? Because you're talking about like stamped foils and packaging, but then there's also the media and the marketing assets. Like, what are the things that people should be considering in that art of differentiation?
Okay. So I'm going to preface this with the fact that what I'm about to say, this applies, the notion of B2C and B2B is antiquated and outdated. I will tell you right now that it was valid at a certain point, and it was probably part of the learning curve as people got into branding, but then it became actually, it became like the only talking points. It's kind of like choosing. It's kind of like the way people can really misuse demographic data, and they look
Mm.
at people as colors or races or sexes or this is or that is, and it's like, excuse me, it's a person who freaking has values. They love or they hate. They enjoy or they don't, and to add these other variables in is just bullshit. The thing is that it comes down to this, and I'll probably repeat this numerous times through this discussion that we're going to have is, but you know, different. We notice differences. The things that are the same, we don't notice. It's like, oh, okay, there's that bottle, and there's that bottle, and there's that bottle of water, water, water. Or there's a SaaS company that's offering how to grow my business, grow my business, grow my business. If they all are basically regurgitations and redundancies of, or echo chambers of what I've heard 5, 10, 20, 50, 100, 1,000 times previously, why should I give a damn? And I do not have the attention span or the interest to actually dive deeper unless you are in on the joke. The best brands get us kind of like, it's like, hey, blah, 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 and they look at you for a little pregnant pause, and they kind of go, and that was a little wink for those that are just listening to this. It's like, hey, yep, that was a joke. And we get it. And it's kind of like talking to that fourth wall where we're let in on the joke. But that is a way of, again, if we do that stupidly, it will fail to differentiate. And one thing you said in the beginning of the show, different is better than better. Sally Hogshead, she talked about
Love
that. And
Sally.
it was very interesting when she talked about that because Chris Do, who's like really into design, the future, Chris had talked about that. And he put a post, and I said, it's interesting. When she talked about it, she talked about like it from the viewpoint of we must embrace our uniqueness. I approach it from a completely different viewpoint. Different is better than better for this reason. If I am coming to you with a product that you already have or a product you're considering, product, service, whatever, if it pretty much, because of how it's presented, how it's spoken about, how I have framed it, how I've talked about it, and named it, etc., if it basically kind of seems very much similar enough to other stuff that I can't tell the difference, I'm going to now be forced, as the one presenting that to you, I'm going to now be forced to list out features, and features and features and features, or I'm going to need to undercut it because I failed to differentiate and basically say, oh, I could do it for cheaper, or I could provide it cheaper. So you either have the race to the top, which is features, or the race to the bottom, which is price. So with all that being said, we're dealing with, why would I want to be in the same category as something else? That is where differentiation is vital. If I'm like, well, that I know I'm look similar to that, but let me tell you how we're different. Blah 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 blah. That plays the game. Like, we're better, we're simpler, faster, easier, this or that or whatever. Why do I want to be in that sandbox when I can actually create my own sandbox? Different is better than better. So I refuse to play the better game. I mean, I could say, hey, it's like, well, what's his face? So Donald Miller. A lot of people like use Donald Miller in the same name as me. He's like, he's done story brand and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's like, I think Donald Miller, I think he's a good businessman. I'm not a fan. It's like I don't think I think he and I ever having coffee together would be a disaster, because we're so different. We're so different. I spit at tradition, and he and the stuff he talk. I mean, I don't know. We're just very different guys. The chemistry is very, very different. So I don't. It's like he doesn't float my boat. But different is better than better. Why would I say, well, I'm like Donald Miller, except I'm funnier, I'm cooler, I'm hipper, I'm thater, I'm thater. I mean, what is that? Why would I do that? That's not as powerful as saying, hey, I'm the slayer of the mundane, and I blowtorch mediocrity. That's what I basically do, out of existence. It's like,
Yeah, and I think too, and I'd love your thoughts on this, because, I feel like, COVID was a gift to the people who differentiate, and an undercut to the people who don't, because it increased the amount of attention spans and consumption of what's there. But to your point earlier, also increase the amount of noise that people see and just filter straight through. And
yeah,
so in that point, I feel like I accidentally became that person, because I was like, oh, you guys are going this way. Well, I don't want to be like you, and I need to go the other way. And my whole career's been built on this almost chip on my shoulder, but really the ways that other people were doing it felt out of integrity for me. They felt out of
yeah,
alignment for me.
yeah.
And so now with the increased noise, I feel like, to your point, the way that I would summarize it is that, like, you kind of have to have a backbone and a hill to die on in what you believe, including in your branding. Would you say that's fair?
1,000%. I mean, I find that the amount of diluted passion has its place in branding. Passion has its place in entrepreneurship. But passion also will not replace. I mean, some people use passion as a replacement for differentiation. That's when I feel it's being used incorrectly. So, like, for example, that's like the great sales guy or sales gal who's going to go, yeah, my passion is that's going to override everything. I don't care about building a brand or something that others. It's like, because I get in front of you, I'm going to close the deal. It's like they're very, very alpha in that way, and that to me is an abuse of passion. Passion is amazing when it is pervasive. Passion is amazing when it opens the eyes of others. And with that, you just inspired me. You guys inspired me. I'm going to take a moment and actually read you, because what you and here, for those that don't know, here's the deal. This is the size of the type in my books. Okay, this is the size
Yeah.
of the type.
And if you're not watching this and you're listening to this, it is George style 101, where I can read both pages in about a minute and my eyes aren't strained and my ADD doesn't take over. So it is perfectly nailed in the right font. I love it.
Exactly. So here's the thing. I know you're gonna, based on just our little discussion prior to starting, you're gonna love it. So first of all, it starts out with a quote from Billy Joel. Billy Joel says, "In a way, we are magicians. We are alchemists, sorcerers, and wizards. We are a very strange bunch, but there's great fun in being a wizard." So that's Billy Joel. It's chapter 15. Ideas have direction. Here it goes. There's one thing we all do. We each have ideas. Some ideas go inward. Some go in all directions. Others go outward. Ideas going outward, benefiting the most people, are the things worth feeding. Pay attention to the direction others offer you in the way of ideas. Some ideas are built on growth. Some are built on destruction, relying on the failure of others to win. Others are built on conservation, which is built on the idea that creation is a scarce commodity. That is false and destructive. Trust me. No matter what, remember, ideas have direction. And then it concludes with, because each chapter concludes with the rich brand and the poor brand. And this concludes with the rich brand knows the true power that results from the quality of ideas and how much they are shared outwardly, like handing out sunshine on a cloudy day. The more we extend outward, the more everyone feels the warmth. The poor brand has long forgotten the power of an idea, replacing rays of sunshine with cynicism, which I call the energy drink of doom. It only looks at what's coming inward and has lost sight of the importance to give outwardly.
Mm. Well, I think I want to, my marketer brain always ties open loops together, right? Like at the very beginning of the show, one of the things you were talking about is like the amount of time that you've been in this game and understanding that in the beginning it was about fame and then it transferred to legacy, but legacy is built on community and community is built on brand. And so even to that point, like I love that chapter, by the way. Is that from the new book?
Yeah, from the new book.
Oh, I'm so stoked to pick this thing up and have my fortune cookie reminders. But even to your point too, like when you were talking about earlier, like with a lack of differentiation or a lack of brand, you're forced to compete on features and benefits or on price, and it's a race to the bottom, but it lacks the relationship, it lacks the connection to the brand for somebody to even want to be a part of it or want to share it. And one of the things I say to my audience all the time in scaling so many companies is that scale comes from retention, not acquisition, and retention comes from shared meaning, shared beliefs, and relationships. And so I love that. I absolutely love that. Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
I love the things that get me to think, because now I have a question about this, because now you open the book and now we're in book territory, right? Rich brand, poor brand, right?
Yep.
What's
Yep.
the difference, the premise of the book, but also the difference for you between a rich brand and a poor brand?
Well, the interesting thing is, so rich brand for me, one of the things that I find is that entrepreneurs have, and I deal with a very wide spectrum from younger startups to legacy brands. Could be, they could be generating $500,000. They could be generating $5.4 billion. I mean, it's the very wide spectrum. What I find is that the richest brands were the ones that had a culture that it kind of it was like a self-generating energy machine because of the synergy, because of the camaraderie, because of like, I got your back, dude. And I not only got your back, I got the back of our customers. The poorest brands are the brands where we're broken into individual pieces. It's like it's a kind of structure and a kind of ecosystem that basically eats away at initiative, it eats away at innovation. It makes me as a player in that feel so insecure that I'm more concerned about my survival or what I can tolerate versus how much I can contribute, versus how much I can actually bring to the game, not only internally of the organization, but externally to customers. Because if I'm lit up, I will light others up. We live in a reciprocal world. If I treat you like shit, you're going to be like, okay, I'm gonna get that asshole. I'm gonna make sure his coffee's lukewarm or cold or whatever. I mean, or if I'm nice, you're like, wow, what a nice gesture. It's like, thanks, man. So anything you need from me? I mean, we live in such a reciprocal world. I think that's overlooked and underestimated in its power. And so the rich brand is not a matter of size. It is not a matter of how many zeros and commas that are that are on the end of the, like in the bank account or in terms of revenue or valuation. It's there is a richness that is self-generating, that is independent, that is able to withstand and rebound. And that's what I firmly believe. So the book, while highly practical, certainly has a philosophy connected with it. It certainly believes in the better things, and it poo-poos at anybody who's stupid enough to get on my radar and basically say, "Whoa, blah, 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 naysayer, negative, blah blah." It's like, there's the door. It's like, I just am not interested, not buying. There's the door. Leave. End. Over. So that's the thing with Rich Man Poor Man. And even to this point, I'll do one more little fireside little reading thing. I feel like I forget what that show was, where it's like someone sat by with a little
Is it
pipe.
Reading Rainbow?
I don't know. It's something. But
I feel like it's story time with David, but I'm a big fan.
Here's how the book starts out, right? It says there's nothing new in this book, new, quote unquote. What's new is how fast your company can be transformed to dramatically unleash your brand's potential. Brand Intervention showed you how to successfully build a brand by looking where others weren't and seeing what others didn't, and leveraging those insights to eliminate that sea of sameness so many brands drown in. Rich Brand, Poor Brand takes it further, helping you craft a culture capable of sustaining the brand you've built. Culture is created by people. The culture your brand builds needs to thrive on ideas and communities to create the kind of environment that enjoys ingenuity for breakfast, inspiration for dinner, and courage for dessert. This is all about unleashing your David in a world of Goliaths. David had a slingshot and kicked Goliath's ass. How? By what he had? No. Or actually, it should be by what he had? No. He was smaller. He had fewer resources. He was less muscular. Yet his success was based on the strongest weapon others underestimated, his ingenuity. It was David's ingenuity that opened the eyes of those around him and opened the doors of opportunity to achieve what nobody thought was possible. You can do the same. And that's basically it. There you have it.
Yeah, and I would actually love your thoughts, and I want you to riff on this one because I bump across this, right? I talk to 5-figure entrepreneurs, 6-figure entrepreneurs, 7-figure entrepreneurs, and I just want your opinion on this. Your product or your service is not your brand.
1,000 freaking percent. All the freaking time. And I take it one step further. Which is this. And this is what really, really helps entrepreneurs, CEOs, business owners get it. Nobody gives a shit about what you do. We are blah, 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 blahs. Yeah, you and every one of your competitors. So what? It's like, you know what people give a damn about? They give a damn about what is the transformation that you make possible. What is a transformation that your product makes possible? What is a transformation? What does not happen in the absence of you not being there? That is the magic. That is the magic lens to look through. Because if you look through that, what you do, what you make, your product, your service, isn't why they're showing up. There's something more. Now, it may be the way you deliver it. You may be better, nicer, happier, kinder, more thoughtful. But I'll add this one other layer, and this I know you're gonna want to talk about this one. One thing I talk about there's an enormous difference between the practitioner. There's like three columns. Practitioner is one, professional is the other, genius is the third. So we have practitioner, professional, and genius. The difference between those three is genius incorporates more future into what they're doing. And I'll give you an example. If you have someone in a kitchen and they're only making what they're making, right? Okay, I'm responsible for the pastry. Good. That's it. They don't think anything else. They don't think about how will the customer enjoy that? How will it go with the meal that came before and after? They're not thinking of they're not putting in a lot of future. They're just going, oh, okay, here's my thing. And they're moving it down the assembly line to the next person that's responsible for maybe bringing it to the table or whatever. The same thing is you can make widgets, you can make pieces, you can make computers, The greatest brands in the world, the greatest entrepreneurs in the world, the greatest athletes, the greatest individuals, the greatest leaders, the greatest artists put in more future into what they created. It was like, and what does that mean? That means that, okay, how will you and I what will be the context in which we will experience that thing? How will we utilize that thing, whether it's entertainment, whether it's a physical thing, whether it's sports gear or whatever? How are we going to use that? And how much of that anticipation of that future use is incorporated? And to the extent that we do that is the extent that we go, holy shit. And we stop asking how much, and we start just saying, which credit card do you want to put it on? But it's that thing. How much? Because it's not something you're ever going to find on a balance sheet. You're not going to see, okay, future, that's a line item. You're never going to see that. But the bottom line is the greatest brands that we all love and respect and revere and will never question have more future built into their service, their product, everything they do, because they kind of already know. And it's kind of like what I call it seeing around corners. They can see around corners because future, it's like, hey, I produced a really good XYZ. Well, that's great. But you didn't think about when I got that XYZ home and how do I unwrap it, or how do I re-gift it, or how that, it's like you did your one little thing and you may have done it brilliantly, but it had no future connected with it.
For everybody listening, I'm just going to say, told you, because this is why I teach customer journey. Like, one of the things I say is the relationship doesn't end when they become a customer. That's the day it begins. And our job is to help them navigate the integration or the results of that product or service to then be able to move on to the next, build community, build relationship, or share that passion with the world. And so I absolutely love it. So I actually have a tangible question, because I love the practitioner, the professional, and the genius. Like, practitioner is like thinking in solo parts, right? Like,
Yep.
Here's this one ingredient, right? I'm like thinking SIPOC model. What's the professional do?
So the professional might be like, let me just think of an example. Oh God, I did not anticipate we are going to talk about this. So I have a presentation that I actually put together where it basically goes into the difference of like of those three columns. Let me see if I can remember it. It's like price, the practitioner is the one where it's like price sensitive. The professional, it's the one where it's like, okay, it's like kind of like product driven. But at the genius, where it's like value driven. It's like price goes out of the equation. Where it's like that's why who asks how much when you go into an Apple store? You're like, I want that color and that much memory and that size. Thanks. Here's my credit card. You don't even. It's not even a question anymore. So, but if Apple, for example, and many tech companies, I think this is where they screw up and they fall into the professional column. They'll produce a good something, but it's not like, oh, when I do that, then that, and oh my God, I found a new little place on my MacBook Pro and it's like, and holy crap, how do they know? They built more future into it, or my earbuds, and it's like I can have the noise canceling, or I can have the transparency. They could have just done the earbuds. The earbuds by themselves would have been really cool because they feel good when they fit the ears really nicely. And they're cool. They're not obnoxious. They're not like too big, and the microphone's quite good, so it actually does a pretty good job, and all that kind of stuff. But you have noise. But now, like, that would have been fine. That would have been professional. But they included now noise canceling, and they included transparency, and they included, so you could do this, you could do that, and this charger, and that, blah, blah, blah. So it's like you can just do your thing really well. And I would challenge anybody listening to this, if you do what you do really, really well, look to the user of your service or product and go, okay, once they get it, is there something more they will need or want? Now, you may build it into that product, or it may be an upsell. If there's like, but whatever that is, how it can be structured, that's the easy part. This is just like, will they need or want something more? Now that they've got that, because now all of a sudden you've changed the landscape. You provided them with something. The landscape is no longer the same. So how could any of us create a product or a service that solves a problem and not now take into account the new landscape that we have introduced them to, and then gone, oh, what will they need now? That is the pathway. So if we ignore that and we're thinking with the old model, we're being pretty freaking short-sighted and stupid. I mean, that we're underestimating the impact that we can truly have in the world. And that's where the magic goes. You go, all of a sudden you go, whoa, wait a second. You mean when I do blah and they all of a sudden realize they no longer have to worry about this thing that they've been or struggle with, and now they actually have a more liberated mindset and they actually feel more capable of doing XYZ. Well, in that new world, are there new needs that they're going to have? Good. That's including future into it.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm going to ask a question about that in a minute, because one of the things that you focus on and have been so bullish on, and to your point, like so powerful and needed, is rebranding, right? Because the other mistake that I see people constantly make is like, well, I made this brand, so this brand lives forever, or I had this thing and that's my entire identity. And so before I ask you that question, though, this always reminds me, because I used to give a talk on this, but I was like, why does Apple only own 1% of the market share, but like 99% of the revenue? And I'm like, all you have to do is go watch an Apple commercial and an Android commercial, because to your earlier point, every Android commercial is feature benefits. It's
Yeah.
literally either practitioner or professional. But if you watch an Apple commercial, it's people creating memories and value in their life. Look at the photos you can take of your kids. Look at you on the skateboard. Look at the magic you can happen. And we're surrounded by it. And
Yeah.
so like, I love that point, because I think it's such a valid point on what you're able to do with brand, and even tying it to legacy, because it is really important to understand that when you solve a problem and fail to think about the future, you're actually creating potentially more problems and reasons for people not to stick around your brand by not having the genius mentality or thinking about what comes after. And so now knowing and tying this together, you've been in this game for so long, and this is probably one of the biggest things that I come into with companies or entrepreneurs at every level, where they hit a plateau and it's like their new values have outgrown their brand, but they don't know what to do, and they feel like they're a victim of their own company.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing to that point, there's one thing that I tell business owners, entrepreneurs, CEOs. I tell them, you don't need a brand. Your brand needs you.
Mm.
And I just let that land. I'm like, because to your point, they've become the effect of their brand. And all of a sudden, their brand is now sacred. It's like, who the hell put the brand there? And if you're evolving, then you've evolved. Plus, last time I looked, the world doesn't remain the same for very long. So technological changes shift, cultural values shift, needs shift, et cetera, et cetera. So the thing is a brand is as powerful as it recognizes its ability to be fluid, but that doesn't mean chasing, just being reactive, chasing. Oh, TikTok's really high. We're going to follow it, and oh, that's really, and like that's just chasing, just being like a jerk. That's like being like it's like a light with a cat. It's like just chasing the thing, and so it's not that. It's take the ownership, and here's a takeaway that I will give, because I think this is important. The greatest brands in the world are built on values. The greatest brands in the world are not built on a thing that is transient. Perfect example. Like, I love music. I love music. I love delicious cuisine, different things. I just enjoy these. I love a craft well executed. And at the time when music was making its transition, I'd graduated from vinyl to cassettes to, never really did the 8-track thing, but vinyl, cassettes, and then, okay, CDs, and then that advanced to digital distribution and then digital streaming. Now, I have in my office where I have over 700 CDs that I refuse to throw away because some of them have never quite made it to the digital transfer. But just as like an emotional attachment, I'm like, okay, they're in our storage room. I got them there and love those. But I remember being a music fan. There's a company called CD Baby.
Mm-hmm.
Now, CD Baby is basically, I think they're still in existence. I believe they still are, but it was based on, hey, here's an independent marketplace. Here's a marketplace for independent musicians, right? Like, great, that's cool. And I would occasionally found some really freaking awesome talent there. But they built their brand on CD Baby, thinking CD was the world. That's not a name in terms of the name portion of the brand. That's something based on something that's transient. That's like me going plastic H2O because I know that all bottles of water are always going to be in some form of plastic, and that would obviously have a limited lifespan, right? But then you take something like Liquid Death. Liquid Death, what's cool about Liquid Death is it has a particular stance and a set of values, an incredibly hysterical brand narrative, absolutely off the charts, funny as hell. People love it, they explode, but they refused to conform to anything. They refused to conform in terms of their distribution strategy, right? They went to cultural events instead of shelves. But beyond that, it was like Liquid Death. It stands for something. We refuse to. We don't want to do the plastic thing because of the landfills and stuff. So we're going to put it in cans. All right, cool, fine, that's cool. But they didn't proselytize. They didn't get preachy. They turned it into a platform for just being more fun than was probably legal to have.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a brand built on values, right? And just do it. That's values. That doesn't say, hey, really cool type of synthetic whatever to make up our gear or whatever. So values are timeless. Technologies, different things and such like that are, transient. So build your brand around something timeless. Build it around values. And when you have built it around values, coming full circle to the fluidity part, then you've got the fluidity because you have that anchor that is timeless. Underneath that, you can have the micro campaigns that can ebb and flow and try this out and try that out. And you say, whoa, this is cool. But people will know that you haven't strayed from your timeless values.
I literally cannot wait till we share the stage together or do a fireside together, because you literally, one of my favorite lines that I use, because one of the reasons I coach so many entrepreneurs through plateaus is because they built their business or brand on practitioner or professional, and they're lacking the values and the shared values to move it on. And by the way, I'm a big Liquid Death fan, like Murder Your Thirst, because like the
I know.
marketer in me, I became the number one consumer and I was like, what a genius. Like, yes. But one of the things that I say about that, I use Nike as a point all the time. I said, Nike's just do it is what I consider a movement, like how you build a culture, right? Like having values that drive an identity for people to do it. I was like, but never have you seen a billboard that said, just do it only if you wear our running shoes. Just do it only if you buy my jacket, right? Like it creates this anchor and this meaning and this sense of belonging with brand. And to use that, like just validated. I feel so seen right now. And I'm like, yes, we speak the same language. You got some reps on me in the game, but like, I'm like, okay, I got it. Like, I feel so seen and understood right now. It's so powerful. And there were so many valuable points in that, because the differentiator, like even one of the companies that I scaled, we were doing like $1 million a month. And then within 18 months, we had a $2 million day. And everyone's like, what did you change? And I'm like, we created culture through customer journey. We created a sense of identity and community, which increased the amount that they used the product, which increased the amount that they shared the product. And I don't know if you've ever read it, but are you familiar with Jonah Berger? The author wrote Contagious and The Catalyst.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm very peripheral. I didn't delve into it. And I didn't like do a deep dive with it, but I'm familiar.
I would never, I don't normally do this, but I'm like, as this conversation, I feel like you would genuinely get so excited about his book Contagious, because he, was a Wharton School business professor and was teaching this class on virality. And one semester had like 60 students. People caught wind of what he was doing. And then they had like 3,000 students show up. So they're like, you can't teach here anymore. You have to write a book. And in that book, and to speak to your branding point on values, it talks about the reason things catch on. But one of them is that humans only share for one of 5 reasons: humor, credibility, education, social status, or controversy. And I joke, I'm like, never have you been at a park where soccer moms show up with their bob stroller and they're like, oh, I'm so excited to use this product because of feature benefits, right? They're always sharing an experience or something around brand. So I feel like you'd really, really enjoy it. I want to go to an earlier point that you made about people don't notice things that are the same. And you asked a really poignant question earlier of like, what's missing in the market? And I'm, a stubborn Marine identity wise. So I like to learn through mistakes. And so I want to use a little inversion theory and thinking about entrepreneurs, both like service-based consultants, people that do what you and I do, but also like physical products. Like, what are some of like the biggest mistakes that you see people making when it comes to brand?
Thinking that, well, we've touched upon it, thinking what they do matters, like that it's, hey, but I'm really good at this, or da 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 da. Okay, that's one mistake. Another mistake is thinking that repeating the cliches that everybody has heard with more passion makes it more relevant.
That one, yep, that one lands.
Another one is thinking that something stupid said more often makes it smarter. I know you've repeated that, Henry. You've repeated that 12 times in the last 14 minutes. I know, but I don't think no, Henry. It's not good. Each time you're saying it, the IQ on that sentence is just dropping a few points. It ain't happening, man. It's like, so it's just that kind of stuff. Um, Other branding mistakes. I mean, God, where do I start? I see so many. I mean, I guess I would say, I'd answer that in the form of an exercise, because I want this to be useful to all that are
Oh,
listening.
I'd love this. I'm ready. Let's go.
I mean, basically, what I would say is, I would say to anybody, write down your industry's most sort of commonly used promises, claims, stuff that, whether it's now and it's not the factor, but it's not true or it is true. This is not truth or untrue, truth or dare test. This is repetition. Like, what's the noise level, and what consists of that noise level? It's like, in there's some industries which is like, hey, well, we're the next Uber of, okay, there's that great one. Or next generation, or cutting edge, or state of the art, or made in the USA, or. Every industry has its chunks, and I would list them out. I'd list them out and make them forbidden to be used by your brand. That will elevate your brand instantaneously, and it will force your hand in getting ingenious and saying, good, how can you now communicate without cliches? Because the thing that people don't always understand is that cliches, the actual definition of a cliche is an overused and unoriginal idea or person.
Mhm.
An unoriginal or overused idea or person. So saying it with greater passion, and some might discount this and say, yeah, no. But when I say it, I really say it differently. No, you don't. That's why I have a pet peeve. Fisher Investments, when their freaking ads come on TV, if you have to tell me that you're a different kind of company, you're not a different kind of company. If that is if that's your slogan, if that's how far you've gotten and paid your high priced consultants and agencies, are you telling me that that's as good as you could get, and I'm supposed to now be convinced that you're actually different because the best you had was a different kind of company? Seriously. So, it's just, and the crazy thing is if you actually, anybody who watches the commercials, if you watch that, the commercial is like, It's like, you mean you guys don't get fees? No, we're a different kind of fiduciary. I mean, it is the most staged, canned communication that is so undifferent than anybody else. And then for you to say, no, wait a second, we understand everything you've just seen and heard that sounds like everybody else. No, no, we're a different kind of company. Guys, you blew it. That is the most lousy, undifferentiating, pathetic campaign. It's a punchline, not a campaign.
Well, it also erodes trust because like I can rant with you on this one all day because like I watch this all day, right? I've been in the game, since the internet existed in social media, and like I watch this because we have a lot of like I'm in the space of like mindset and consciousness and personal development, and the one that gets me every single time is like, "Hey, let me be authentic," and I'm like, "What were you doing before?" Or then
Right.
one of the big pet peeves I have is like, well, and I used to say this accidentally. It's like, let me be honest. And someone's like, have you been lying to me the entire time? And I'm like, oh, got it. Right. So to your point, like we're a different company. And I think there's a point for everybody listening too, because one of the other ways that like I love brand and differentiating is like not proselytizing, but also making your stance known. And people know this all day. Like I know Russell Brunson, I've known him for years. But one of the things that I will do when I walk on stage, and like, oh, and just for the record, you're not one funnel away. And everyone's like, whoa. And I'm like, yeah, like, how I feel based on my values all day. And I'll say things like, would you be okay if your mother went through your funnel? And all of a sudden they're like, oh. And I was like, well, then why is it okay that mine does? Right? Like there's values and things that can
Right.
be done in there. But I love that point because I watch some commercials like only when I'm traveling and in like hotel rooms, and I'm like, some marketer or consultant got paid $1 million to make this. Like this is nauseating. Like how are they even in business right now? And so I love
Unbelievable.
that. And I'm going to give a tangible point to everybody listening because one of the things that I do when I go into scale companies, and you might even take this, is to your point about writing down your industries like most commonly used promises, claims, and the noise. We make what's called a good words and a bad words document. And the bad words document is nobody in this company, customer service, you, content, podcast, writing, ever get to say these phrases. And then when you play that game, to your point, it forces that hand of iteration of like, well, how can I describe my values? How can I make a stand in something? And then those go in the good words document. But those are like the Bible filters. Like nothing goes out if it's in that bad words document, and it only goes out if it's in that good words document. So for everybody listening, that is one of the most profound, powerful exercises, because the easiest way to find what you stand for is to go find everything that you stand against that drives you nuts. Because I will say, for me personally, and this could be anecdotal, but the brand at the deepest level has to be in alignment with how you truly see and feel the world, or else you end up becoming a victim to it. And so if you're seeing those things in your market and every time you see it, you're like, oh, and then you find yourself repeating it, it's never going to have the texture or the depth to work anyways, but you can flip them on its head. And when you find all the things that you stand against, or you're like, I can't stand that, you can use inversion theory and be like, well, what do I stand for? Right? Like, what do I believe in and how do I say that? So I love that exercise. It's probably one of the most simple but profound ways to find your beliefs and your values and your brand and differentiate. So I love that. What were you
Perfect.
pulling up? You doing story time again?
No, I'm actually plugging. I'm about to plug in my MacBook because I'm looking. I'm going. Oh, that's probably about 10 minutes. It's gonna say, "Hey, dude."
So, and I'm going to say this now before I forget. I said at the top of the show before we land this plane, David and I got connected on social media, and I think somebody introduced us, but I became like a massive fan pretty quickly, and I have been diving in. And to your earlier point, the best things are simplistic, especially when it comes to brand and takeaways. It's not supposed to be complicated. And I have been, even last night for everybody listening, I was diving into videos 9 years ago, 5 years ago, and I'm over here taking notes in my notebook. And so before I forget, besides the books, I want everybody to write down and take note. This is in the show notes, but David's website is risingabovethenoise.com, which I also love from a brand perspective. Risingabovethenoise.com. And I would highly recommend, because both are on Amazon, they're also linked on his website, that you grab his books. So Brand Intervention has been out since what, 2017?
Yep.
Yep. And I love it because guys, these are not like oh, I'm going to go read this cover to cover, you can, but it's also a coffee table book and a really poignant reminder of the things that make you differentiate as a brand. And then the new one, Rich Brand, Poor Brand, How to Be a David. What's the subtitle of that one?
How to unleash your David in a world of Goliaths.
How to Unleash Your David in a World of Goliaths. And he was sharing with me before the show, and I'm stoked to get it because he focuses on like the 20 traits that make a rich brand and how to embody them and to use them. And so I just want to share that link now, just so you hear it multiple times, but it's risingabovethebrand.com.
No,
And
rising above the noise.
risingabovethenoise.com. Sorry. Thank you.
Yep.
Risingabovethenoise.com. And I'll have everything linked in the show notes. And so I kind of want to put a bow on this, but for a lot of people listening, like there are so many things that you shared from like the greatest brands are built on values, like there's space to iterate. It gets to be in your beliefs, a powerful exercise. But for people listening, like, and also understanding, in my opinion, that the power of a brand is also in the power of the iterations. Like if people feel like something's missing or they want to start differentiating, like where do you recommend that they start? Like how do they go about, like, maybe I have been in practitioner bucket, or maybe I'm all about product and I've never thought to value, but like what tangible steps can people take?
Well, all right. So here's another little power trio. Whenever, and I'm sure you run into this as well, whenever I'm approached and someone says, "Hey, David, we'd really like to talk to you about rebranding us." Da 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 da. Usually, the conversation around, we want more sales, we want more customer acquisition, we want to feed our pipeline, conversions, etc. It's all on what I call the finish line. That's the finish line. I frame it this way: sales is the harvesting of the seeds planted. That's the first thing I say. Can we agree on that? And they're like, yeah, okay, good. Sales is the harvesting of the seeds that have been planted. And I said, in the history of mankind, there are two specific actions that have preceded each and every sale. And whether that sale is a proposal of marriage or that sale is a product or a service, I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. Here's the way it works. There's this thing that immediately precedes it. That's called marketing. Marketing's job is to spread the seeds, make the offers known, make the offers desirable. That's marketing. But marketing's job is not, that's as far as it goes. It's in the execution band of the whole sales cycle. Prior to that is this: how do we actually get people to understand how our seeds are different from all the other seeds that are out there? That's in the realm of branding. So those are three pillars, and they need to be done in sequence. I have more companies that come to me and they've jumped into we're doing marketing and we're not seeing the sales that we want, blah, 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 blah. What should we do? Can you help us with marketing? And I'm like, no, but I can help you with your branding, which will then allow marketing to make wise decisions based on what the hell you should be talking about and what the hell you shouldn't be talking about, and how are you heard as different if people are just hearing you, if they're just hearing an audio message or a podcast or something like that, or when they see you, can they see you at a glance? Why is it that I never confuse Apple's ads with anybody else's? Right? I mean, brands need to own their space. Why is it when I see something about Liquid Death or the crazy guys, Midday Squares out of Canada? I mean, those guys are out of their freaking minds. They are so insane. What is it? I think it's the woman and then her husband and her brother. I think that's the trio of them that makes it up. But Midday Square, they're freaking nuts. But they took a category. I love the idea of taking a category that everyone else looks at and says, there's no room here for innovation. And I look at them and I say, get used to disappointment, because you're going to be freaking wrong. Because that's not a fact. Someone saying that there's no room for innovation is an opinion. And it's actually a statement of defeat. And it's an acknowledgement that I've run out of my imagination quota for this life. Let's go big, right? I've just run out of, I don't have any more room for imagination. I've done enough ingenious things in my life. Good. Name me one. Right? So, because I refuse to allow people to rise to a level of mediocrity and think they've achieved something. That is just crap. So it's just, that's the thing. There's such an opportunity for ingenuity. I was asked at one point to brand frozen water, dude, ice. And I succeeded. Ice, frozen water. You want to get it free? Anybody listening to this, if you want to challenge brand frozen water, that's almost as bad as sell me this pen. I mean, it's like,
Yep.
come on.
Yep.
But the thing is I said, I'm like, brand frozen water. What the hell? And I said to the owner, I said, is there anything? What can you tell me about your ice? Is there anything different about it? Is there any? Well, we did hear, someone said like it makes drinks colder or something faster or something like that. I said, is that even possible? He goes, might be. I said, can you get an independent lab to test regular ice against yours? Yeah, sure. I said, good. 9 days later, he calls me up and he goes, we have the results. I said, and? He goes, our ice cools drinks 33% faster. I'm like, excuse me? And he goes, I said, how's that possible? He goes, because of the shape of our ice and the increased surface area of our ice, it actually cools the drinks 33%. So, of course, we created, and because of the shape of them, they were kind of like cylindrical and stuff like that. We called them ice rounds, cools 33% faster than traditional bagged ice. And it became the number one ice asked for by name. It was like, do you have ice rounds? Not like do you have ice? Do you have ice rounds? I mean, so that was when I learned, honestly, there's no such thing as a product or service that's dull or boring, but there are professionals who are dull or boring who have the word expert somewhere in their curriculum or their CV, their resume, and but the bottom line is be willing to challenge, be willing to accept the fact that boring is not fate and that dull is not inevitable. It's like people. It's like there are people that light other people up. Why is it that I can go up to one person and I feel better after talking with that one person? I talk to another person and I have basically the same conversation and I feel like crap. Something happened. Something was different. The one that lit me up, something happened. Brands can do the same thing.
Mm. That is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful way to end the show, because that was like a TED talk in its own right. So like that 3-minute clip, I'll make sure that we pull that one, because that just kind of nailed it. And by the way, I love that because you and I have so many similarities. Like I feel like I'm talking to my Yoda right now, because I say the same thing about customer journey. And I was like, everybody needs a customer journey if you're having a product or service. And somebody challenged me with batteries. And I was like, oh, you lose. I'm going to make people battery hoarders, battery addicts. And then we broke it all down and they're like, oh, and I'm like, plenty of options when you play the game right. So I love the frozen water, right? Like that is such a good one and so similar to like sell me a pen. And I love that. So for everybody listening, I'm most likely, and I'm just gonna socially pressure him right now and have him back in the future, because I genuinely enjoyed this conversation drastically. But for everybody listening, I'm gonna put my foot down on this one. I think brand is probably, in the space that I live in with everybody listening to this, one of the most neglected things and one of the biggest afterthoughts when it comes to everybody's businesses. And to your point, brand is the description and understanding of what's in your garden before your marketing spreads those seeds for then your harvest to be able to pull them and people to eat. And it's probably one of the first things that I focus on when I go into companies and helping them scale. And so this episode is worth a re-listen, 1,000%. And I highly recommend that you go get involved in David's world. So risingabovethenoise.com. And I would put both of those books on your coffee table: the brand brand intervention, and then Rich Brand, Poor Brand. And we have another thumbnail to pull for this one. So, and now I have two of them. And David, genuinely, I'm going to ask you one last question that I ask everybody, and you're like loaded with wisdom, and you've been through so many seasons, and I know you're also seeing, like, my joke right now is like I've been in marketing long enough that I'm watching us come back to the same cycle of like connection and humanity, and you've been in this game for like a hot minute, and so I was asked my guests, like, imagine that everybody listening was kind of Men in Black and they forgot every single thing that we talked about, but you have the ability right now to kind of tattoo any wisdom or takeaways or things to focus on in their soul. Like, what would your tattoo wisdom be for everybody listening?
Be the fuse that ignites the light within them.
The fact that my branding is a lighthouse and you just said that just puts a bow on this pretty little package. Holy moly. Be the fuse. Can you say that one more time?
Be the fuse that lights, that ignites the light within them.
Be the fuse that ignites the light within them. That might be your third book. Next one. Just going to put that out there right now. Like, I'm a big fan of that one. Be the fuse that ignites the lights within them. Brother, it was an absolute honor. I literally don't think I've taken this many notes in 6 months, but I have reminders and key takeaways and little things I'm going to put on sticky notes around me of like, okay, thanks for the spark today. So like, genuinely from the bottom of my heart, like, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for being so open and making this practical and useful. And just thank you for being here.
1,000%, totally my pleasure as well. I it definitely feels like we look at the world opportunities through similar lenses, and refuse to. There's definitely a refusal to sort of accept what's It's like, wait a second, I know you spent all day making this. It still tastes like shit. So how can we fix that? It's like.
Yes, you and I see the world the same, 1,000%. I'm over here when you're like sharing about like differences of opinions and Bowman. I'm like, oh man, this guy's my future self right now. So like, I have hope I can make it. I'm going to keep walking this path. Like, thank you for charting it in front of me. I'm going to put my gas pedal down and keep going. And so it was an absolute honor. And for everybody listening too, David's on social. We'll have it all linked in the show. But if anything was a takeaway, if anything landed, if you have any questions, like, reach out. I know he'd love to hear it. He's super active on social. You heard him using the power of relationships and getting forwards to his books. And so like, give him the gift of like letting him know that this landed, letting us know this supported, even if you want to share your big takeaways of like, hey, here's a brand statement I made. I know it would only fill his bucket and give him more evidence for what he does. And so, for everybody listening, the one last thing that I'll say, especially about this, is that, I say this in a lot of episodes, but I know based on how many things resonated with me today, that there's a takeaway for you in here. So just don't allow it to become shelf help, right? Branding doesn't happen behind the scenes. Branding happens in relationship with your community and the people that you're holding that vision for. And so put them into practice, try them, play with them, give yourself the ability to, like, as he would say, flame throw that mediocrity, right? And slay the mundane, and keep iterating and going, because your identity and your brand is really your greatest gift to your business or your service, and it gives you your values. And so put them into practice, iterate it, practice it, play it, and most importantly, differentiate. So thank you for being here, my friend.
Totally
for everybody
my
listening, this has been another crazy episode of the Mind of George Show. So I will either see you in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs, but either way, we're out.